Welcome to my presentation about North Korea. I was lucky to visit there in the summer of 2019, and I'd like to share with you some stories about things I saw and things we got up to. Annyeong, that's one of the many ways to say hello in Korean. North Korea and South Korea share a common language and common alphabet. I lived in South Korea for 2 years, from 2004 until 2006. I can't pretend to know much of the language, but I can read the alphabet, and it is a very fun place to visit. I totally recommend visiting South Korea and exploring its culture. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea is not very democratic at all. And there's an old joke that if a country has democratic in the name, then you shouldn't expect it to be democratic. It has a border with South Korea to the south and with China to the north. As you can see, Beijing is just there to the left of the map. It's quite a long journey to the border. It's about 14 hours by train. From the border to Pyongyang is about 5 hours on North Korean trains, which is they're quite slow. They're only doing about 60 km an hour or something like that. And North Korea is quite mountainous. If you look at the physical map, much of it is quite high. In North Korea, on the peninsula of Korea, all the highest mountains are in the north, including Mount Baekdu, which is the most famous one. And you'll see imagery of Mount Baekdu everywhere. It's an old volcano that is the spiritual home of the Korean nation. So, which of these things would you expect to find in North Korea? Here's a list. Pause the video here, have a think about it, and then when you're ready, press play again and I will tell you. Okay, let's talk about these. Smartphones. Yes, North Koreans can buy smartphones, but only their own domestic brand of smartphone. The App Store is only for North Korean apps. You cannot access foreign websites from North Korea. You cannot even make phone calls or send text messages from North Korea to other countries. It's not possible. North Koreans cannot willfully contact the outside world. It's just not possible. Access to Facebook, though, was possible. When you cross the border, we could still access our Chinese phone signal. The customs control on the North Korean side is only about a mile from the border, so you can still get the Chinese phone signal, and I was able to put my VPN on and access Facebook and send photographs of myself while in North Korea. Quite pleased with that. Christian churches, a few of them exist for foreigners and diplomats and so on, and they do tolerate that in North Korea. I didn't see any, but apparently they exist. Buddhist temples, they do exist too. I mean, normally communist countries are very anti-religion, but they do allow a few Buddhist temples to practice. Mercedes-Benz cars. In the mausoleum where the two Kims lie in state, they had their personal artifacts, and each of them owned a Mercedes-Benz S-Class, because nothing but the best for the presidents. Australian folk music, yes, in the library, in the music part of the main library in Pyongyang, we found a cassette tape by Slim Dusty, the famous Australian folk singer. Totally surprised. He's the guy that sang a famous song called The Pub with No Beer. Heaven forbid such a thing would exist. Traditional Irish dancing, yes, when we went to the mass games, we saw dancers performing what looked like traditional Irish dancing, and we heard the song Guantanamera. KTV, as you know, South Koreans love karaoke. That's what KTV is. When South Koreans go to KTV, when they go to karaoke, that means they hire a private room, just themselves and their friends. They get some beer delivered in and some snacks, and they have a private room for 2 or 3 hours and just sing the songs. And that's how karaoke is done in East Asia. And we did that on the last night in North Korea in the hotel. It was very good fun. We had some tourists, and we had the North Korean guides and so on. It was good crack. Ballantine Scotch whiskey, yes. Before the tour, we were advised to bring gifts for our guides. So we were told our guides would be 2 female and a male driver on the bus. So we were advised to bring cosmetics for the females and whiskey for the men. So I did that, and I brought some Ballantines from China for the bus driver. And on the first day in North Korea, we were in a shopping mall, and we went into a supermarket that had foreign stuff in Pyongyang, a very rare thing. And I found a bottle of Ballantines in that supermarket, and the Ballantines in Pyongyang was actually cheaper than it was in China, and I was very annoyed that I wasted about €2. South Korean people, no, you won't find them there. South Koreans cannot get a tourist visa to travel to North Korea. It's just been tightened in the last few years. There was a détente about 15 years ago where South Koreans could go on tours, but the relationship is not so good at the moment. It's gone through a more tense period than usual. So South Koreans cannot get tourist visas to North Korea. Also, Americans cannot now enter North Korea nowadays. A lot of that comes from the Otto Warmbier incident about 3 years ago. A young American man called Otto Warmbier was traveling to North Korea. He was with the same company I went to. He stayed in the same hotels. And then on the last night, he decided to, for hijinks, he decided to steal a poster from one of the staff rooms in the hotel. And when the company was taking everyone back to the border, he got arrested, and he was known. They caught him on CCTV, and he was remanded into a North Korean prison. He couldn't be released, and he eventually was announced to be in bad health. So he was flown back to America when he was in extremely bad health indeed, and he died in the USA. His family said he was tortured when he was there, but it's unlikely that he was ever tortured. He probably, suffered a breakdown in prison, and took an act of self-harm. That's obviously dreadful, but it's unlikely that North Koreans would torture a mere tourist. They know he's just a tourist. He was only 20 years old, and North Korea does want to have smooth relationships with countries in many ways. They're not going to torture somebody just for the sake of it. I Will Be Your Father Figure. That was a song by George Michael, of course, and that relates to these two guys, the two dead Kims. Kim Il sung on the left was the first president of North Korea. He died in 1994, and his son Kim Jong Il on the right died in 2011. And they are the only two previous presidents of North Korea. These two statues apparently are solid inside. They are obviously very, very expensive to make. This is Victory Day. North Koreans come to this place to lay flowers to celebrate these two dead Kims. Behind them, you see an image of Mount Baekdu, which is like the spiritual home of the Korean people. And Kim Jong Il was born near there, allegedly. One thing you notice that I am breaking a rule here. I've got my hands behind my back, which is totally not allowed in the photograph with the Kims in the background. It was 9:30 in the morning on that day. It was about 35 Celsius, very, very, very humid, but we have to wear long pants as well. We were told that. So it's just one of the rules when you go to this location. No shorts allowed. You have to wear a formal shirt. And one other thing about this place is that it has some amazing statues. North Koreans do statues really well. All the statues are wonderful, and they're very, very lifelike, really, really well crafted. So it's very, very, very impressive indeed. Look now, look all around. There's no sign of life. That's a song by Duran Duran called Planet Earth, and this is one of the main squares in Pyongyang. This is where they have the military parades, and there's nobody around. This is 5 o'clock on a weekday evening, and there was nobody around at all, apart from a few buses, a few trolleys, trolley cars, that is. And it's quite Spartan in Pyongyang. It always has this feeling that there should be more people living there. Games. What is that? Now, I don't have a picture on this slide. The Mass Games is a major public pageant in North Korea, and it doesn't happen every year. But if you want to go to North Korea, I would recommend it, but I strongly suggest to go when the Mass Games are on. Do not miss the Mass Games. It's amazing. If you go to North Korea once in your life, it would be a terrible thing to miss the Mass Games. They are absolutely enormous. I've got some videos on YouTube, and I'll put some links maybe in the comments below that explain a bit more about the Mass Games and what happens. It's really, really, really amazing. It's a song by Madonna, also by the Eurythmics, two different songs. And who's this girl? If you know, either you're good at trivia or you have a very, very, very dirty mind. This is Jenna Jameson, famous porn star. Now, what's she got to do with North Korea? She's probably never been there. But one of my stories goes like this, that on the first night in the hotel in Pyongyang, a few tourists sat down to just tell stories, and it ended with just three of us, a guy from Australia, a guy from Poland, and me. So the guy from Australia told his story, the guy from Ireland, me, told my story, and the Polish guy told his story. And he said he was an engineer. He recently returned to his career in engineering after a break of about a bit more than a year. And we said, what did you do in your career break? He said, I was a producer of pornography. And then we noticed that he had a lot of tattoos up his sleeves of his arm, like on both of his arms, on his legs, on the sides of his head, and even apparently on his, other places you can't see on his body. And a lot of the tattoos were ladies with not many clothes on, and ladies doing things with other ladies, and it's quite a sexually explicit. And that's a problem because in North Korea, pornography is illegal. Many things are illegal in North Korea. The Bible is illegal. The Lonely Planet travel guides are illegal. Taking money out of the country is illegal. But certainly pornography is illegal because it corrupts the people in North Korea. That meant he had to cover up a little bit. But amazingly enough, he didn't get into any trouble on this trip, even though he had pornographic tattoos all the way down his arms and legs. He said that he got tired of the porn industry. He said he couldn't make any money off it. He used to upload his videos to his website, and then people would download them and put them in torrent files and share them for free. And basically, he lost his income like that. And I just thought that there was no integrity in pornography anymore. It was a very cruel business to be in. Summer in the City, hit by The Loving Spoonful from the 1970s, also sung by Joe Cocker. And this is a couple of monuments in the center of Pyongyang. You've got a workers' monument and a replica of the Arc de Triomphe. Celebrate good times, come on, that was Kool and the Gang. And this relates to a visit we paid to the metro system. We took a little tour through a few metro stations in Pyongyang, and you see a lot of murals like this, the ordinary people celebrating the success of the North Korean government. I don't know what this banner is saying, but it does say something about Kim Il-sung. I can read that in Korean. It says Kim Il-sung Jangun Mansyo, whatever that means. But this is just celebrating the success. And one thing you notice about Pyongyang is the metro stations are really, really, really deep. Obviously, they're built as like Cold War era bunkers and so on. And you do see a lot of statues of the Kims. This is Kim Il-sung when he was a young man. And you'll notice in this one, I did stand with my arms straight along my sides. There was a guard standing on the platform, and he saw what we were going to do, taking photographs, and he gave us the nod and told us to take the photograph correctly with your arms at your side. So that's something we had to do. These are the gardens of the Great Hall of the People, and it's got some very pretty statues. And as I mentioned before, North Korea does a really, really, really good job of statues. The statues are really beautiful, really lifelike, and they're just quite beautiful to see. When we arrived on the first evening, we arrived in Pyongyang at the station at about 6:30 in the evening, and the sun was setting slowly. It was a beautiful summer's evening, about 25 Celsius, and we stopped off at a restaurant, and we were told the food wasn't quite ready for us, so we were told we could take a little walk. So we just walked around the neighborhood for a few minutes and just took a look at what Pyongyang was like. It was quite an exciting moment because we just arrived in Pyongyang and really felt for the first time that we're in North Korea. And this was one of the first things we saw. This neighborhood had a few high rises like this. And obviously it's quite modern. You'd imagine it's quite nice inside. Streets are in good condition, it's very clean, there's no trash, there's no convenience stores or anything like that, so there's no trash, and people are just doing their daily thing, enjoying the sunset, sitting in the park on park benches, people chatting on the side of the street. It did feel a bit choreographed and a bit unusual, but I don't know whether that was whether that was just a feeling we got. I think North Koreans tend to be a bit quiet anyway, and if you see how they behave, they don't really interact with strangers. They're a bit shy, and they tend to be very shy around foreigners. What few foreigners are there, so they tend to be quite modest in their behaviour. It's not like some Asian countries where people shout a lot and spit a lot and so on. And I'm keeping my baby. That's another Madonna one. Papa Don't Preach. So who's the Papa? These guys. This was in the bookstore that we visited on our walk around on the first evening, and you can buy a selection of books written by any of the three Kims. Kim Jong-il obviously was a massive film fan, and Kim Jong-un, his son, still believes in the final victory of communism. So, yeah, so a few of us picked up books and posters like that. The real souvenir to bring from North Korea is propaganda posters, but they're not cheap. They're like about €40 for a good propaganda poster, so it's not something I thought was worth spending on, but I got a book. Hear that whistle blowing? That's Johnny Cash, Boston Prison Blues. This is what North Korean countryside looks a bit like. It's very green, a lot of rice fields. The first thing you notice about it is that they don't waste any ground at all. Remember, North Korea had a big famine in the late 1990s. A lot of people died, and a lot of that was down to just not having enough food. And nowadays they just don't waste any ground. When you see the rice fields, they tend to have ridges. Obviously rice fields are usually in squares or rectangles. They have ridges to divide each little plot, and the Koreans tend to plant vegetables on those little ridges, typically potatoes, but often carrots and stuff as well. You might see at the side of the railway line like this, where you have a massive rice field to one side, and in the little gap between the railway line and maybe a canal and the field, they will have corn. They grow corn on every little corner that they can. It's quite amazing because back home we only grow corn in big fields where the machines can access. In North Korea, they tend to do all the agriculture by hand. We saw no tractors, no combines, no other machines at all in the countryside, and that was during 2 5-hour train journeys between Pyongyang and the border, a 5-hour bus journey between Pyongyang to the DMZ and then back again, and another journey of about 4 or 5 hours to the mountains in the north. No agricultural machines at all. Dust roads mostly in this part of North Korea. This is just inside the border. Our train, and this was us having a bit of lunch on the train. First meal in North Korea, and we had a few beers and some soju to celebrate. Most of these guys behind us are our guides, one or two other tourists in the photograph as well. And you know, food in North Korea is a bit like food in the south, it's the same dishes, but it's just a bit simpler. And you get like a pint bottle of beer for less than €1, and a bottle of soju, and that is, you know, that makes it good fun. Green train station looks like. Again, the Kims are there, and there's a man in uniform looking skeptical about us. North Koreans, as you notice, are pretty slim. You don't see any fat people in North Korea, and you know, you do see some very old looking trains. Dancing in the street. That was a song by Martha and the Vandellas, re-recorded by Mick Jagger and David Bowie. This was in Pyongyang, and this was a preparation for the Victory Day. These people are practicing for a national dance. They're practicing in costume, and a few of us tourists, including myself, joined in, and you know, we ditched one of the male dancers and danced with a North Korean lady for a few minutes, and then twisted around and enjoyed the North Korean music, and then took a break, came back and did it the same again. And that was quite good fun. It was 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was already about 35 Celsius, so we didn't do it for very long, but it was quite good fun. Dance if you want it. That's a song by Men Without Hats. You know, if your friends can't dance, and if they can't dance, they're no friends of mine. And that relates to the Korean National Circus, which is quite cool. Very high standard, as you'd expect. Gymnasts, trapeze artists, and singers, comedians, jugglers, all that kind of stuff. And they had this nice little theatre with the stage in the round, and then of course the stage retracts, and underneath it it's got a swimming pool, and it's got synchronized swimmers, and they, you know, do trapeze, and then they jump into the swimming pool and then do some synchronized work and so on. That's quite cool. The unfortunate thing is that towards the end of the show they brought in a couple of bears, to do juggling and take part in some tricks, and a few of the tourists were very, very, very annoyed about that. But I was thinking, like, why are you surprised? You've got bears in the circus in North Korea, not surprising at all. Thinking of the day when you went away, that takes us to the mausoleum. You can find the two Kims in here. You can visit them. They are both in glass cases in very cold, air-conditioned rooms. First of all, you go through like several security controls, then you go through a ante-room that has sliding doors and is very, very closely temperature controlled, and then you go into the first room that has the elder President Kim Il-sung, and he has been preserved quite well. He looks quite a bit like he did in life, and he's in a blue suit. First of all, you bow at his feet, then you move to his right side and you bow at the right side. You go around by the head, then you bow at his left side. It has to be a full bow. You bow from the waist and go the whole way down, and you do it quietly and dignifiedly, and then you leave the room. And then you walk through a few rooms, and then you come to the other Kim's room, Kim Jong-il, and you do the same in there, 3 bows, and just show your respect. You can see some of their artifacts as well. Like I mentioned, you've got 2 Mercedes cars in here. One of them from the elder Kim. Both of them had S-Class Mercedes. They have a quite large boat that they've taken out of the water and put in the museum. It's the boat of Kim Jong-il. And the most interesting thing for me was the train carriage. Kim Jong-il died on a train carriage. He had a heart attack while on a state visit to a rural town. And inside his carriage, you've got his desk, you've got his sofa, and you've got his MacBook, which is open on the desk. And I didn't know that dictators use MacBooks, but hey, I guess I always thought that North Korean dictators would be more of a Microsoft people, but they have MacBooks. And this is Pyongyang. This is yours truly at the Jewish Tower overlooking the city of Pyongyang. As you notice, Pyongyang's kind of Spartan looking, and the major landmark is the one you can see behind me, the Roygang Tower. That's the world's worst hotel officially. They commenced building it in the late 1980s and 1987. It has never opened. It didn't even have windows for the first 20 years. It's over 100 stories high. No one knows what's exactly inside it. The rumor has it that its elevator shafts are not straight, so you could never actually open it as a functional building. The North Koreans apparently ran out of money as well, and it had no windows for a long time. And then about 10 years ago, a Egyptian company got a contract to put in telecoms in North Korea, and as part of the deal, they had to put windows and LED signs on the side of the building. So at night time, the tower lights up, and you got quite a nice display of North Korean flags and flowers and stuff like that. It's quite spectacular. And you can drink some snake wine while you're there. This is Pyongyang from another angle. Behind me, almost directly, you can see the sports stadium. That's where the mass games happen. It looks a bit like a giant jelly, a giant trifle or something like that. And it's quite a interesting thing to see. Just not in the picture, you will see a power station. Pyongyang has a coal-fired power station very, very central in the city, and it just pumps out very, very bad smoke. And it's horrible, but that's just how it is in North Korea. The good thing for me is that means that Pyongyang doesn't really have power cuts, unlike the rest of North Korea. If you look at North Korea from space, it's pretty dark, but Pyongyang does have a steady power supply. And this is what it looks like to the south, I think it was. Just a mixture of quite modern apartment buildings and a few a bit older. And like we say, there's no pictures of anybody except the Kims. This lady was our guide, and she was absolutely lovely. She had a wonderful singing voice. She told some very dirty jokes about Bill Clinton. And at the end of the week, everyone wanted to stay in touch with her. And we asked, how can you stay in touch with us? And she said, you can send an email to my company. The company only has one email address for all its staff. And if we are lucky, the email might get printed out and sent to her. And she was obviously very, very well spoken. She spoke English extremely well, but had no travel experience outside North Korea. And it was it was quite a shame. She was the kind of person you would love to hang out with. The other guide was very, very nice and maybe a little bit less social. The other guide stayed with us in the hotel for all the time, but the other guide had a young child in Pyongyang, and she couldn't go home to see her child in the evenings, even though the child was only a few miles away. It was really kind of unusual. These are official haircuts for North Korean ladies. Highway to the Danger Zone, a song by Kenny Loggins. What danger zone are we talking about? We're talking about the demilitarized zone. This is the most dangerous place in the world. Allegedly, it is the frontier between North Korea and South Korea, and it has been a no-go zone since the 1950s. It is a few miles across, and in some places quite narrow, some places wide. And right now I'm standing on the North Korean side. You can see behind me there's a roadway. There's two blue buildings which are right on the border. You see those lines in the middle. They are the border. They represent the border between the two countries. The grey building behind me, that's in South Korea. It's in a different country. And this is where the peace talks usually happen. The blue buildings, there's three of them, and the middle one is the conference room. When Donald Trump came here in 2019, he met Kim Jong-un, and Trump stepped across the border, and that happened just behind me among those three blue buildings. I made a new friend on this trip as well, and this man is our official guide from the North Korean army. We had a checkpoint at the entrance to the DMZ, then he joins the bus, then you travel for a couple of miles into the demilitarized zone. You pass through villages where people work and farm, and on that journey he told us a bit about himself, but he asked a lot of questions about the foreigners. He was quite friendly and quite charismatic. The Australian couple on our trip are engaged, so he asked them about when's their wedding day and so on. And we thought he was quite funny, and apparently he's an interesting guy. He's always friendly to tourists, apparently, and he's due to retire, so good luck to him in his retirement. When Two Become One, this is a song by the Spice Girls, of course, and this represents the attempts to reunify North Korea after 70 years separated from the South. And this photograph just looks into the South. As I said, the grey building is in South Korea. It's just across the border. Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump met just right in the middle ground here, where the blue buildings are. This is a sign that says Joseon Hanada, which means one Korea, the dream of reunifying North Korea and South Korea. There for you, sung by the Rembrandts, of course, and this is a new friend I made on the way back from the DMZ. This man and his wife make makgeolli, which is a very traditional Korean drink, very, very strong type of rice wine. You drink it from a gourd, and he liked meeting foreigners. He was quite gentle and very well presented, and I'd love to hear this man's stories. He had no English at all, of course, but we enjoyed meeting him. And on the right, you've got the reunification arch, which represents the two Koreas and the hope North Korea and the South will be reunited. North Koreans love to say they want to be reunited with the South, but what the government really means is they would like the South to be like them as well, and that's never going to happen, of course. This is quite an experimental photograph. One of the ladies in our group actually was quite a skilled photographer, and she said, put your phone just above the puddle and get the reflection. I think it worked quite well. Space is what are we living for? It's a line from Queen, the song called The Show Must Go On. Anyway, one thing you notice, as I think I mentioned earlier, Pyongyang is very Spartan, not many people around at all. This is the viewing gallery from the Great Hall of the People, and in the background you can see the Jewish Tower, where I was the previous day. And you see, North Korean flags and so on, not much else around there. There's no advertising. There's no pictures of anyone else apart from the two Kims. This inside the Great Hall of the People. This is the library. So to get a book, you kind of write down the details of the book on a sort of a Rolodex, and then the person in the chair puts it on puts the card on the conveyor belt. Then the card goes into the back room. Then eventually the book comes out from behind. You have people working behind to send the books out. Like that, there are kind of places where you can browse. This is the foreign cuisine section. You've got cuisine. Got cookery books here from Mexico, from Germany, from France. Got fish recipes, chicken recipes, and right on the top shelf there's a book about dogs. I'm not going to speculate why the book about dogs is in the cookery section, but well, who knows? Songhorse, hey, good luck and what you got cooking. I can't remember who said that. Like I mentioned, we asked the librarian to share with us some music. Do they have any Western music? And she dug out the first thing in front of her, which was a cassette by Slim Dusty, the famous Australian folk singer. Not the kind of music I expected to find here. In the library, with people studying, a few people using North Korean smartphones and internet and so on. And like a lot of communist country public libraries, it was quite decadent inside. It's quite impressive. The Desert on a Horse with No Name, sung by America. That relates to these statues. You often see statues and photographs of the Kims riding horses. It's just an impressive thing. And you also see their paintings just around the place. The lady behind me, that's Kim Jong-il's mother, who died relatively young, but she is considered a national hero in North Korea. Rural Charm of the Country, sung by Blur Country House. That relates to this place. We went to Maisan Mountain, which is in the north of North Korea. We were supposed to do some hiking up here, but it was very wet the day before, so we spent a night in a little hotel, and then the next morning we visited this amazing valley that had this very nice temple in front of us, and it also had an amazing museum. The temple had these guys at the entrance. These are guards, and their job is to crush the bandits. There's the bandit underneath his feet. They also had beautiful gardens in this temple area, very, very well turned out and very presentable. Like I said, there's almost no litter in North Korea because people just don't buy junk. They don't buy wasteful stuff. There's no convenience stores. They eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at home. The restaurants that are there are fairly simple, and there's no waste of plastic and stuff like that. No trash at all. It's totally clean. Interesting. It's good to touch the green, green grass at home, as Elvis and Tom Jones used to sing. Now, was to visit a museum. Who's that lady? She was our guide in the museum, and she was a very patriotic North Korean lady. She asked me a bit about myself, and she was very impressed at my interest in North Korea. This museum houses a lot of artifacts that were given to the Kims in the last 70 years of the country of North Korea. It does have its allies around the world. Communist Russia is an ally. A lot of African countries are allies. Among the interesting things in this museum, you will see are a jet that was given by Stalin, several Russian limousines, like the ZIL Russian limousines. There was several pieces of jewelry or large ornamental items, such as a very large slab of red granite, a gold-studded sword from the government of Kuwait, and there was two pieces of Connemara marble donated by the Irish socialists. And amazingly, there was 3 basketballs donated by Dennis Rodman. And all 3 basketballs were numbered, and the 3 numbers represented the birthdays of the 3 Kims. It was quite an amazing place to visit. I have no photographs from the inside because photographs inside were not allowed at all. There were no windows in this museum. It's all totally built into the rock inside in what used to be a cave, and they just excavated it. And they have this massive museum with over 100 rooms. When you go to museums dedicated to the Kims, you'll see a lot of very unusual stuff. For example, you see honorary doctorates from different countries around the world. You'll see different awards from unusual countries like Equatorial Guinea and places like that. One of the funniest things we saw was an award from a town in Peru that gave an award to the first and second Presidents Kim and the wife of the second President Kim. And the award was giving all 3 of them the honorary title of alcalde honorario, which of course means honorary mayor in Spanish. And that's funny because the certificate was dated 2008, but the first Kim had already been dead for 14 years at that stage. He is the honorary mayor of a town that he has probably never visited. The first Kim, as you know, he is the eternal president of North Korea, even though he's been dead since 1994. He is still the president in technical terms. This is a beautiful place to visit, actually. Obviously, it's very, very lush valley, and we had a nice coffee just sitting on the balcony of the hotel. Sorry, not hotel, balcony of the museum overlooking the valley. And this relates to a cave we went to, and it has some massive stalagmites and stalactites. North Koreans do have a sense of humor. In the cave, there are several different chambers, and this one is referred to, I think, as the male and female room. There was a male room and a female room, but as you can see, the stalactites resemble male and female body parts, and that was a source of amusement to the North Koreans, so they named the chamber according to what the stalactites looked like. Looks like we made it to the end. This is our tour group, very nice group of people. We've got England, Brazil, Iran, Canada, Australia, Poland, several from Poland, and we got on quite well. I think a few of us are going to stay in touch, and I'm quite jealous of some of the travellers here. The man in the peach-coloured shirt, he was travelling on an Iranian passport, and he said he'd been to about 140 countries, and he'd been to about 40 in the previous year alone. He just went on a travelling frenzy where he used to reschedule his working hours, and living in New York, he would put 2 weekends together to make 4 days and just fly off to Bermuda or somewhere like that. And I thought it was really keen. You do meet some serious travellers in North Korea. There was a guy in our group. The group we see here is like a subgroup of a big tour. And there was a guy from Estonia, a man in the 60s, who'd been to about 160 countries. And he'd been all over the world. He'd been to like Burkina Faso. He'd been to some dangerous countries in Africa. He'd been to all parts of the Himalayas. And I asked him, wow, you've been to all these amazing countries. What did you think about Ireland? He said, Ireland? I've never been. And we just laughed because he'd been absolutely everywhere, but had never been to Ireland, a country that has direct flights with his home country of Estonia. So, yeah, quite a cool bunch of people. The man on the right, that's Nick. He's a tour guide. Nick is only 23 or something like that. He joined this company. Originally, he came as a tourist on a tour to North Korea and loved it, and then joined the company as a tour guide. And he's been to North Korea more than 30 times. Kamsahamnida, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this talk. And maybe if you're interested in going to North Korea, I would recommend it. It's expensive to get there, but Young Pioneers do a really good job. They make it very straightforward. They organize everything for you. You don't spend much money in North Korea when you're there. Usually if you go to a restaurant, there'll be like one beer included, and then you just buy the other beers yourself. There's not much in the way of souvenirs to buy, and most of the souvenirs are cheap, apart from the posters that I mentioned, which are a little bit expensive. But most of the time, once you go to North Korea, there's not much to spend your money on at all. It is quite a fun place to go, and even though the trip costs a lot, it's not that dreadful, really. Young Pioneers, they have tours like a weekend break to North Korea starts at around €500, and that's not bad at all. So, kamsahamnida, and see you next time.